Hey everybody, I'm Teresa Wiedrich. I am the graduated homeschool mom turned certified life coach who is in this space for the purpose of helping homeschool moms shed what's not working so they can show up in their homeschools and their lives authentically, confidently, and purposefully. And if we haven't met already, it's lovely to meet you. So I am here at the kitchen sink and it's a disaster. I'm talking about perfectionism today, and I thought it was apropos that I would be standing in front of this. And if you want to see what this is, I am going to show you what this is if you head over to the Patreon group, the Confident Homeschool Mom Collective. You'll find it there if you are a free or a paid member. So I'm going to put that over there after our conversation. So it's lovely to meet you. I'd love to hear about you. I'll consider this a two-way conversation until we are actually in a two-way conversation. So I'd love to hear who you are, who you homeschool, and what your homeschool mom life is like these days. So if you haven't already met me, I'm Teresa. I'm a graduated homeschool mom of 4 kids over the last couple decades. Depends on when you want to start that conversation. When did I really start homeschooling? Was it when she started reading? Was it when she was born? Was it when I finally decided after 2 years of research to take her out of her school? It's a debate. But I don't need to figure it out because I am well past the experience of trying to do homeschool mom perfection. And as I said, check out the Confident Homeschool Mom Collective on Patreon and you're going to find out exactly what I'm talking about. I have learned to overcome perfectionism, and it was a real challenge for me. But here's the thing, I see it manifested in homeschool parents in a variety of ways, different experiences. It's not just in, is the kitchen sink tidy, or is all the curriculum up to date, and has everybody done everything they're supposed to do today? I see that manifest in a variety of different scenarios. If you don't already know, what I do is I support homeschool moms to really enjoy their homeschool lives more, enjoy their family lives more, enjoy their mom life more, and enjoy their life beyond the mom role more. So today, we're going to talk about 3 myths about the homeschool or the perfect homeschool that might be holding you back. So if you're not feeling good enough and you ask yourself, could I be doing better? I don't think this is good enough. Or you're struggling with your own unrealistic expectations, you're routinely frustrated, then I'm going to guess that this conversation will benefit you. So I'm just going to take a little bit of a glass of water. I've been running around trying to get things all set up before the sun goes down here on the West Coast. This is a series of lives that I'm doing this week to let people know that I'm doing a free Masterclass series next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this next week. If you want to register, I'm going to be discussing sibling bickering, which I know for myself is one of the most uncomfortable things, the things that I actually found most irritating as a homeschool mom. And then today's conversation is a deeper one. It's more about perfectionism, good enough, worth, the things that aren't really just homeschool mom experiences, they're everybody's experiences. Hey, Beefly Wellness, I would love to hear if you are willing to share your first name. I'm assuming that's not your first name. You've been homeschooling for 3 years, an 8-year-old daughter, and you work from home as well. That's a lot going on right there with an aging parent too. It's really lovely to have you here. I think it was the 3-year mark where I really hit a wall. And I found that 3 or 4 year mark is often when moms get really frustrated. Hey, Leona, I'm Teresa. I find that that's the year, somewhere between the 3rd and 4th year, where people realize what they've really gotten themselves into, and they either decide to jump out of homeschooling or they figure out how to do it on their own terms to actually enjoy their homeschool more. That was my experience too. So let's talk again about the perfect myths. When we have these ideas of what a perfect homeschool is supposed to look like, it gets in our happiness way. Can I hear an amen? For some bizarre reason, we have this idea that it has to be perfect. Frankly, is there anything perfect in this life? Possibly a baby. But other than that, everything else, There's so many imperfections. But before we begin, I'm going to share with you about 3 different experiences that some moms have about this perfectionism thing, how they're challenged by it. And I know there's myriads of possibilities, but I'll share 3. 2 of them that are out of other people's stories, and one that is another person's story, but also my story. But I'm going to just take a look at it behind because I'm not that good to have it all memorized in my head. I took it specifically from their words. So one mom said, "I want my kids to be motivated and enjoy the homeschool life I'm giving them, but they just don't. Sometimes they spend hours trying to figure out that I'm serious. You have to finish the work before you get to play outside. I hate it, but I feel like we really have to do the work, so I insist they do it." Have you been there or experienced that? I certainly have. It doesn't work, but I certainly have done it. Then another mom said this, "I'm challenged by overreacting, expressing anger or frustration, anxious with uncertainty, doubt, or lack of confidence, and I feel overwhelmed." That's like all the feels. Parenting has been a huge growth opportunity for me as I unlearn harmful behaviors that I observed or received as a child. It's a constant struggle. I have many resources and supports and have been doing the inner work for a while now. Though it's an ongoing journey and an evolution, there is still far to go. Do you identify with that, mom? So in my experience, that very much does resonate in my experience. I named my website capturingthecharmedlife.com back in the early days of homeschooling when I began writing about our homeschool experience. And the reason is because I was really looking to create this perfect, intentional life that didn't have all the suffering and the challenges that I had when I was younger. And I know that this is a lot of moms' experiences too. Sometimes they're coming from really hard stuff, and sometimes they're not, but they still want to create this perfect life for their kids. I identify with that, mom. I'm curious if you are in that space too. Then another mom shared with me that I have to do this homeschool thing right. My husband or mother-in-law or father-in-law or entire family is against what we're doing. I need to prove to them that if you do this right, it's the best for our kids. Hey, Daniela, nice to see you. So I'm curious if any of these experiences of not good enough, imperfect, not perfectly right homeschools, if these things resonate with you. One of the most common conversation points I hear is, "I don't know if this is good enough." Sometimes I seriously question whether what I'm doing is right by my kids, and I'm thinking maybe I should either send them back to school or I just don't know what to do, even though I really want to do it. I want to do this homeschool thing. I can see all of the valuable things in it, but sometimes I wonder. And if you are in that experience and you've got that, you are not alone. I joke when I say you are alone if you've never had those experiences, but sort of I'm joking, sort of I'm not, because it's really, really common. I too wish, as a homeschool mom, when I was full in the thick of it, I wish that I knew that there was other people around me that were thinking like that. And for some reason, we just didn't say it out loud. And I'm saying it out loud because I know it's true. And now, not only do I know it from my experience, but I'm hearing it in different variations from moms all the time. I don't even think it's a homeschool mom thing. I think it's a mom thing. Possibly it's a female thing, but that's a different discussion. I don't hear a lot of men say, "I don't know if I'm good enough," although I'm sure there are some, but I know it's a mom thing. So if this is something that resonates with you, well, let's chat. So I know my thoughts on these answers or on these questions. I, first of all, don't actually like doing Q&As, which isn't useful because as a coach, how am I going to get out and have a conversation with you if I'm not actually addressing real people's questions? But my real lived experience is that people's answers are not mine. People's answers are inside them. And I am the person that asks a lot of questions to help you get clear on what your answers are. But since we are not presently in a true one-on-one conversation, I am just going to assume that I know a few things about these moms, which, I do know about these specific ones, but I don't know about you, and I don't know your backstory, and I don't know all the details to your experience. But my first thoughts on these questions from these moms, or these experiences of these moms. The first one is that, remember that mom that was saying, oh, my kids are going to sit down and they are going to just do the thing, or else they're not going outside. They're not motivated. I want them to be motivated. They're going to do the thing. Thank you, Danny. I so appreciate that. It'll be here waiting for you, and also on YouTube by the end of the day. And for sure, if you are interested, if everybody hasn't heard this, I'm offering a free masterclass next Wednesday, March 5th. And if you can't attend live, you can always get the webinar or the replay. So this mom that says, I want my kids to be motivated, but they're not, and they take a long time to do the prescribed activities that she's putting in front of them, and that she's insistent that they do them. So even if they don't like it and she doesn't like forcing them, it's going to happen. Well, I've learned that motivation doesn't happen by force. It just doesn't. It's not the recipe. If you decided to make haystacks today, you know, those yummy chocolate with coconut cookies that are no bake. If you said, I am making haystacks, but I don't have coconut, I don't have sugar, I don't have butter or oil, and I don't have cocoa, but I do have flour, I have vanilla, and I have eggs. I am making the haystacks. You're not getting haystacks. That's not a haystack. And I've learned that motivation is not, the recipe for motivation is not including force. It doesn't include force. It doesn't work. So that's my experience. Motivation doesn't work with force, or isn't motivated by force. And when we try to force certain activities on our kids, though we think they're very important, just because they're important doesn't mean it's going to work. And the second experience I've had with this lady who I identify with, where she says she's really challenged by being, she's someone that overreacts. She feels angry more often than she wants, and anxious and uncertain more than she wants. She lacks confidence and she feels overwhelmed. She's had a remarkable growth opportunity in parenting. Oh, how most of us identify with that. But her goal in homeschooling and in creating this beautiful life is to prevent all the things that she'd experienced earlier. And now she wants to create this beautiful environment for her kids. And I identify with that one. That's been my story too. Sometimes we so desperately want to get it right for our kids because we didn't have it right for ourselves, but our kids aren't living our childhood. They're not living our childhood. They aren't having the same experience as we are. Do you know how I learned that lesson? Because one of my kids told me that. And I know this to be true for every one of you, that your stories are not identical to your kids. We don't need to create a perfect utopia for our kids. In fact, for other reasons, it wouldn't favor them anyways. But we can't. And we aren't really looking to create that utopia for our kids anyways. We're looking to create that utopia for ourselves. So consider that if you're challenged by perfection. So the third discussion point, when the mom had shared, I have to do this homeschool thing right because so-and-so, my husband, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, whoever, is against what I'm doing. So I need to prove to them that what I'm doing is right, which means it has to be perfect. And my reminder, my podcast reminder from a podcast or a homeschool podcast when I was homeschooling, she's still podcasting actually, Vicki Tillman from the Homeschool High School podcast. Her and her friends were hosting this podcast, and She said on repeat, there is not one right way to homeschool. There isn't. There isn't one right way to homeschool. There's not one right way to parent. It doesn't exist. When we get clear that there is not one right way, but our goal is to actually raise up our children. I mean, because I did do the classical homeschooling, I know that the root of education is educato, and that means to raise up or something similar to that. So if we're raising up our children, if that's our goal, then you're not raising up everybody's kids. You're raising up your children. And every kiddo is different. Every kiddo is here on the planet for a different reason. They're here for such a time as this. And your kids, they're having a different life experience than you, and they're being raised up differently than the homeschool kids next door or down the street. Different kids, or a different experience than the kids in the homeschool co-op. We have different kids, so we need to raise them up differently. There isn't one right way to do it. I would also add, in my experience, both myself and walking alongside other moms, that your challenge with your husband or your mother-in-law or your father-in-law or whoever it is, it's a relational challenge. It isn't really about homeschooling, but I'll bet you know that. So to me, that's not small potatoes either. Relational challenges are pretty big. They're pretty big challenges at times, but this homeschool life, learning how to live outside the box, is an invitation for you to address those relational challenges, and it can be a very good thing. So consider that there's two ways to approach that inner compelling to do it right because somebody else is criticizing or maybe criticizing your choice. One is that there isn't one right way to do this anyway, and perhaps it's a bigger relational challenge with those people. Those are my first thoughts, but I'm not having a conversation directly with you, and so I know I don't know all your story. If you want to, you're always welcome to join me in a no obligation conversation to talk about these things, and we can come up with a little bit more clarity on what your challenge is. If you'd like that link, let me know. If you want to learn more about these conversation points, I've got one of 3, I think, really important masterclasses for homeschool moms coming up next week. So in my anecdotal research over the last 5 or 6 years, when I am doing one-on-one coaching with moms, I have learned that there are about 6 or 7 very familiar challenges that moms have, and I'm going to be addressing that in the upcoming Reimagine Your Homeschool group coaching program, which will start, I believe it's March 11th. I cannot believe I just said March. It does not feel like March, but I'm going to be discussing that there. And I'm going to actually let you know a little bit about this group coaching program next week, but for the first 40 minutes of our conversations in each of these masterclasses, I'm going to go into a deep dive on topics like I shared yesterday in the live of the discussion on child bickering or sibling bickering, which was my least favorite element of homeschooling. Can I hear an amen? That was tough. If you're obviously still in it and I'm not in the same space. Most of my kids are grown up now, 3 of my 4, and it's a different world now. But it is so memorable being in the thick of some of that conflict that it feels like yesterday, like as much as laboring a baby, I remember. And because I get to hang out with you, I also know detailed stories. Sometimes I'm hanging out with you while the children are fighting. So I get it. It's a lot. It's my least favorite thing about homeschooling. But then today's conversation, I think, deeply influences everything we're doing in our homeschool. If we don't feel good enough, if we question what we're doing and we are always feeling like, is this right? Could we do it better? We're not going to enjoy the process as much. So I'm going to have the conversation about sibling bickering next week. I'm going to have a conversation about this, perfectionism. And tomorrow live, I'm going to be having a conversation about the third topic. And that's also a masterclass that I'm going to do on the following Thursday. So if you would like to have the link, let me know. Or you can head over to my website, capturingthecharmedlife.com. If you wonder why I haven't changed the name of my website, it's because I've had it for so long. And also I came to understand that though we are trying to capture this charmed, perfect life, it ain't gonna happen. But I do, and I do believe we can transform our challenges into our charms. I know it because I've seen it with myself, and I've seen it with a lot of moms. So I think we can use this homeschool mom life as a way for us to embrace the challenges so we can learn from it. We learn from our kids. We learn about relationships. We learn about what education really is. We learn from our children. We obviously learn a lot of things about all sorts of different things in the world. And because of that, we create a really charmed life. So if you want to head over to my website, you'll find the link, www.capturingthecharmedlife.com. So, well, here's a way to bust the myths. One thing I realized after years of homeschooling and working with other homeschool moms is that perfection really is a myth. And believing it actually makes your life harder. When you think there is one right way, you feel more frustrated. You do enjoy your life less. You try to do more. You give yourself these unrealistic expectations and you're frustrated when you don't achieve them. Obviously, here's why it matters. Because we're chasing this thing called perfection. We're spending our lives absorbed by this thing called perfection. And it's not realistic. We know it intuitively, but we're too afraid to let go and just be present for what is. But when we let go of false expectations, of things that don't really matter, and we create a homeschool that actually matters to us. We live into those perfect sweet moments, just like when our babies were just born and they weren't colicky and all the other kids were happy, and we held them and we're like, ooh, this feels good. This is what I made, or this is what was given to me to nurture and care for. It's perfect. That baby is perfect. And though I don't think that we can live our homeschool lives without perfection, and we can't live our homeschool lives without challenges, because we can't live a life without challenges, I don't think we have to hold the burden as heavily as we have been. So if you're still hanging on here, or you're curious to learn more about this, I'm going to guess that this has been a burden for you. So here's the myth number one. I need to be super organized to homeschool well. At least that's a myth in the early years. Do you identify with that still? Is that something that you experience? Because for me, that was solidly like 3-4 years. I was holding on to that for at least 3 or 4 years. I've heard other people say that they're still holding on, and it's well into the almost double-digit years. But being super organized to homeschool well, like keeping color-coded plans, that was me, or keeping a day timer and making sure everything was always checked off. That was definitely me, and I was doing it with the well-trained mind as my philosophy, and using Sunlight curriculum and all the check boxes, and I was trying to achieve all of that. I would love to meet like just one mom that actually was able to accomplish that and enjoy their life. I would love to hear that. I've learned that structure matters less than connection. I know that people say this, and you probably hear this a lot, and you're like, yeah, I want that, but I just don't know how to let that go. The structure, connection. Now that I can see where my kids are at, 3 of the 4 grown up, really the 4th is awfully independent. It's only a year away from graduating. I can see that connection is the only thing that I wish I had done differently. Now, I did actually. I think I hit it well many times, and I learned a lot over the course of time, but I could always have had more connected moments. Now, all the homeschool curriculum that's still undone in my homeschool room over there, that I probably should sell now, it's not all done. And it turns out it doesn't matter to me anymore. It wasn't complete. It would turn out that at age 18, kids don't stop learning. I'm still learning. I'm doing something right here that has truly challenged me in the last few years. I love one-on-one coaching. That is my thing. That's where I'm really strong. Being in front of a screen in a public space, it's not my thing. Okay, just like imagine being on the other side of this. except for Trina, because hi, Trina, I know you do this as well. This is a stretch for me. This is not comfort. We grow our entire lives. We learn our entire lives. We don't stop learning at 9 or at 18. Kids learn best. Not only do we enjoy our homeschool more when we create those connected memories with our kids, but kids learn best when they feel safe and seen and supported. They learn better. Motivation is not required when kids are really connected to their parents and they're doing things they love. A rigid, perfectly organized plan doesn't guarantee what you want. In fact, in my experience, structure, if there's too much, it backfires. Motivation gets squashed. And not just your kids, yours too. Hey, honey. You know who you are. I've seen moms spend hours planning detailed lessons only to feel frustrated with their kids and with their kids resisting them. P.S. I was one of those moms. I certainly see this in new homeschool moms. They ask, where's the routine? Where's the right routine? Where's the right curriculum? Just tell me how to do it, what we should do at 8 or 9 or 10, and then all will go well. I've also seen it with moms who want the best for their kids, like us, so they keep expecting things. We keep layering in new learning opportunities, new books, all the things. New clever learning opportunities. And then we are overwhelmed or we don't have margins in our day. And we're not really actually considering the child in front of us. In fact, in my experience, some of them really don't want as much content as others. They don't want to read as many books. They don't want to spend time with as many kids as some other kids in our family. They don't want as much. And yet we think, well, but that seems like the right thing. But we're not looking at the child in front of us. So when we focus on connection first, our homeschool days definitely get more easy. They just have more margins. We just actually enjoy them more. And it turns out we have more agreeable kids overall. I mean, kids are kids, but more often than not, there's more of a release and kids are more on board with you because they're connected with you. So what you could do is create anchor points in your day, like a morning read aloud, or you could create a daily nature walk as part of your day. Rather than trying to control every moment, just include anchor points. If those don't resonate with you, don't do those. But if you have other things that you want to include, more of them, fewer of them, do whatever you want to do. And ask your kids how they feel about it too. The myth number 2 is a good homeschooler never doubts themselves. So many moms tell me this, that if I was really cut out for this, I wouldn't feel uncertain. This is just not true. This isn't true. Every single person who starts something new feels uncertain. I did in the first week of my nursing. I trained as an RN before my oldest was born, so she's almost 24. And I remember being terrified, like, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't believe someone actually gave me the stethoscope. They gave me the little tag. I bought the scrubs, and I'm showing up on maternity, and here I am. I'm ready to, what am I doing here? Do people believe I'm an RN? I'm scared. And you know what? I'm married to a physician, and I frankly love his story more because it seems a little more daunting for people. But the truth is, when he was a resident, the day before he was a resident, he was a medical student. And the day he was a medical student, he was considered somebody that jumps and learns from whatever scenario is coming in through the door. And so he'd be available to pay attention and do things if somebody gave him permission. And he had to study on the things that he'd see. But the next day, or perhaps it was a week later, somewhere in the summer of, I guess the year doesn't really matter to you, but 25 years ago, he was designated a resident, which meant now you get to decide what's going on with this patient. You get to decide what to do with this patient. That was a really big shift in responsibility. He didn't feel like he was ready for that, but it would turn out they were paying him to. He had the education to. You would think he did. He had the MD, or he had the Dr. Jim Wiedrich on his tag, and he had to believe it. And you know how you had to believe it? The same way that I had to believe it as an RN, the same way we all have to do anything when we're new. We have to actually show up and keep doing the thing. And we keep doing the thing and doing the thing until we finally feel like, yeah, I can educate my kids. I can raise them up. I got it. I can see what I need to do because you kept doing it. So second guessing yourself, being uncertain of yourself. This is normal. This is just normal human experience. So the next time you doubt yourself, ask yourself, what would I say to a friend who felt that way? You'd probably reassure her. So offer yourself that same kindness. This is the third myth. Or it will be if I can find it. Myth number 3 is if I do it right, my kids will always love learning. No. Wouldn't it be great if every homeschool day was just exactly how you always imagined when you first signed up for it? They were excited, your kids were soaking up whatever you were doing, they were interacting, they were enjoying the process. And you too, you woke up every day enjoying the process. But the truth is, nope, resistance is normal. It's just a human thing. I mean, I have conversations. This is something I almost never hear from the homeschool mom space, except that I'm seeing this pattern that when we get to a certain year of our homeschool, no magic year here, but when we've done homeschooling long enough, sometimes we have a child or two. We still have 2 straggling along, but I say straggling because we're not actually that into homeschooling anymore. We don't really want to be doing it the same way that we did with our first 2 or 3, or you fill in the number. We lose interest. That's normal. Can I just say that that's normal? I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but I see it as a routine that we're determined, if we have signed up for homeschooling and we're confident this is what we want for our family, we're determined that this is a really good thing, so we have to stick it out. And yet, if we were asked honestly, do you love it anymore? Are you as interested or motivated yourself? The answer is, well, maybe it's yes. I don't know you specifically. But I hear often that sometimes it's no, I'm actually kind of tired of it. And I don't want to say that because that sounds like I'm a bad mom. I'm a bad homeschool mom. I got bored. I got tired. Or I don't want to do it the same way. I did it a certain way for the older kids, and now I feel like I'm not doing it as well for the younger kids and not giving them the same opportunities. I feel bad. Well, these things are normal experiences. And when your child is not enjoying every learning moment, that too is normal. And this matters, this conversation point, because you're setting yourself up for frustration if you're expecting that your kids are always fully engaged, or that they will never be frustrated, they'll never be bored, they'll never push back. Kids resist for all kinds of reasons. They're tired, they're hungry, they're overwhelmed, they're tired of their sister being around, or just because, when you get to a certain age especially, it's like, does anyone have the answer? And frankly, side thought, but when we get into the perimenopausal years, we're like that too. So it turns out we all have moments where we're not enjoying our life the way we were. There's resistance. Kids have to sometimes just figure life out. And so we need to give them space. And if we're always expecting them to be on, we're kind of not making it easy for them. And certainly when we're trying to force a child toward anything, we're not making it easy for ourselves. One mom I worked with was a mom of 3 kids, and the 2 oldest boys were classic academic kids, and they went along with the story. Mom wanted to do a certain curriculum in a certain way, they went with it. And they did quite well. They grew up, they achieved what she had thought they would. Not exactly, not identically, but they really did do a lot with their education. Then, enter the 3rd child, who wasn't. She was a teenager at the time, and she just wasn't as interested in the regularly scheduled homeschool program that the other 2 boys had participated in. And the mom was really frustrated, had a lot of conflict with her daughter. Her daughter wanted to do artistic things, play on her phone, or at least hang out with her friends all day long. And she didn't want to do any academic things. So we spent some time over the course of 4 to 5 months hanging out together and unpacking what was really going on there. She came to accept the child that was in front of her, and her relationship with this daughter became more fluid. She accepted her child. This kiddo is not the same as her brothers. I'm not as engaged or interested as I was in the way I was engaging my first 2 kids. And their relationship at the end of the time got a lot healthier. And it turns out this kiddo surprised her mom and started doing some academic stuff after all. Resistance. When we push against it, we sometimes make it harder for ourselves. So what you can do instead is ask yourself, is failure a statement on your identity, or is it just feedback from other people? What can you do with it? What does that feedback tell you? What's working? What's not working? Adjusting and just seeing the child in front of you, all of that is just part of your homeschool parent journey. So I've got a bunch of questions that I could answer here, and I'm gonna do a flyover because in thought of time. But I've received a bunch of questions like, how do I know if I'm doing enough in our homeschool? What if I don't have a set curriculum? Can I still homeschool well? Most of us can answer that one. So, but having said that, I'll discuss all these questions in the Q&A next week in our masterclass. How do I handle self-doubt and feeling like I'm failing? What if my child resists learning and I feel like I'm not a good enough teacher? How do I balance structure with flexibility? What if my homeschooling doesn't look like the picture perfect one I see online? It doesn't. And like I said in the beginning of this live, even as a graduated homeschool mom, I'm not doing this perfectly, and I don't actually care anymore. If you head over to the Confident Homeschool Mom Collective on Patreon, I'm going to post a picture of what I'm standing in front of. It's imperfect. It was very hard for me to move from that perfect, focused mindset that I had in my early 20s and throughout my early family days. But now I'm here and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I just didn't want to do the dishes before I hung out with you. And when we become accepting of our reality, we enjoy our life more. And I'll do the dishes later anyway. So the one that I want to answer that I think is useful is, how can I stop comparing myself to other homeschool moms? I'll add that I think all these questions are useful, but how can I stop comparing myself to other homeschool moms? I'd love to hear the background story, but I would say this one thing, that for whatever reason you're comparing, it isn't really about homeschooling. It's about something else, not feeling secure in yourself and who you are and what you're bringing to the world, why you're on the planet. And when we spend time together, if you join me in the coaching, then we're going to go on a deep dive as to why you're comparing and get clear on who you really are and what you really bring to the table, what you bring to the planet right now. Okay, so I'm going to leave it at that because I could go on for a little while longer with a bunch of other questions, but I'll get to those Q&A or this Q&A next Wednesday, March 5th. You're invited to the free masterclass, Letting Go of Perfect. Can good enough actually be enough? It will help you ditch perfectionism and really be present in your homeschool. Enjoy it more. Make a homeschool that actually works for you. If this resonated with you, would you do me one favor and send it to a friend that you think would benefit too? That really helps me to connect with other homeschool moms. And beyond holding a baby in my arms, beyond marrying my husband the day I got married, beyond homeschooling my kids and creating so many amazing memories, the most amazing thing that has happened in my life is to do this work with you, to walk alongside you, to help you shed what's not working and to really come in to your own, you becoming more you becoming more authentic, confident, and purposeful in your homeschool and mom life. the most fun ever. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. So helpful. I'm so glad to hear it. So I hope you have a beautiful week, and we'll talk to you soon.